5 o'clock, and I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Saugeen Shores Committee of Adjustment. It's February the 20th, 2024, and I'll call the meeting to order. The first item of business is the land acknowledgement, and Michael Martin will read that for us today.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which consists of the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash unceded First Nation. We understand this land holds immense significance to the people of Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. We appreciate those who live and work alongside us today and who continue the traditions of their ancestors as stewards of the land that we are privileged to inhabit. We thank them for the contributions they have made in both caring for the land and in shaping this community. We commit to truth and reconciliation, to acknowledging the truth about what happened to Indigenous peoples because of colonization, and to reconciliation, which begins with each and every one of us. As a local government and public organization, we are dedicated to learning about Indigenous culture, to fostering a better relationship with First Nations and their peoples, and we commit ourselves to actions that move us forward on a path to healing, along with the Ojibwe, with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
At this point, if anybody needs to declare a pecuniary interest, you can do so, or you can do that at any point during the meeting. Seeing none, our next order of business is the adoption of minutes from the December the 18th, 2023 meeting. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that? Moved by Vice Deputy Mayor Myatt, seconded by Member Wallace. Is there any discussion about the minutes as presented? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that carries. We have one item of business today related to an information report about the introduction to the new sign bylaw project. And we have a report before us that was prepared by Josh Plantz, who is the manager of building services, and Josh will make his report now.
Thank you. This is an information report outlining the process that we're going to take to write the new sign bylaw. The sign bylaw kind of sits in the building department. We regulate it and issue permits for signs. In the past, we've found the existing sign bylaw a bit cumbersome, so we want to kind of get a new format that's a lot easier for the public and for staff to read and use. So in this report, we've detailed how the background that we have taken to that we're going to use to rewrite the sign bylaw, and we have laid out the process that we're going to do to bring the new sign bylaw forward. So that's my report. I'm open to any questions.
That was quick. Well, I'll open it up now to members. Certainly you're able to question any aspect of Josh's report. He also gave us on the agenda, there was an indication of a number of sign variances that have happened over the past 3 or 4 years, and also a document guidelines for the development of a sign bylaw that was prepared by a sign association. It's not for sure, what would happen here, because of course we're capable of customizing and creating our own bylaw. But if you have any questions about Josh's report or what's in the guidelines, just to provide some feedback to staff, who will then go forward with our suggestions, comments, questions, and I know it'll eventually make its way to council. So members who have questions or comments? Vice Deputy Mayor Myatt.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor, and hello, members of the committee and members of the community. Josh, I'm just wondering, first of all, thank you for your report, and I think this is a good thing that we're really starting from the beginning. The sign bylaw has always been a bit of a bone of contention in my view, is that we have a sign bylaw, but it seems like we people come in for a minor variance, and we change it pretty regularly, and it's not a bad thing necessarily, but I think that this will tighten things up a little bit, and make things a little more simpler for the future. Josh, I'm just wondering, a couple of things, and it's probably in the guidelines. I see where there's prohibited signs and signs that don't require permits and so on and so forth. But just a couple of areas I want to talk a little bit about, discuss is the signs that you see sometimes on signs on the side of a barn or side of and on a piece of property in town that it's not owned by the business operator that of the sign, but they're really putting it on a friend's home or on the side of a fence, on a corner or something like that. Those second third party signs, I guess, so to speak, are really prohibited, correct? Like it's the only time you're allowed to put one of those big 4x8 signs up is really in an area where you rather own the property, or the town has a grant permission, but they're not third party locations aren't permitted, correct?
Thanks for the question. Yeah, they're prohibited currently, yes.
Yeah, because you do see them um, pretty regularly around town, around the area. You see signs. I'm not going to mention names of businesses, but you do see them around town. And is there is there enforcement? Is there enforcement that happens from time to time when those kinds of signs show up?
Yeah, the bylaw officer is actively takes that on as a case. She does have a lot of cases with signs right now. So yes, it is
Okay.
enforced through bylaw.
Okay. What period of time do those businesses have to take those signs down typically, if they're really illegal?
I don't know if there's a set time. She usually tries to work with the owners, but
Okay.
I could get it for you if there's a
Okay.
set time.
The other question I have, Josh, about signs that don't require a permit. Can you just, for committee, just explain again what types of signs would not require a permit? I see the proposed guideline signs that don't. Just go over that for me again. What's deemed as not required for a permit
The,
for?
the proposed guidelines are there to kind of, I added them to the report as kind of to give you a standard structure. The actual like meat of the bylaw is good. I'm going to take the meat of our bylaw and try and put it into that standard structure, and then we
Okay.
can kind of work through some of the catch points that we have right now. But
Okay.
it would be in a nice standard bylaw structure.
Okay. So just to finish up here, and I probably have a couple more later, but I want to give you an example. It's just one example. I'm going to pick on this one group, the Southport Horticulture Society, for example. It has a plant sale in the end of May, um, and they put they is that's a not-for-profit organization. So in the bylaw, I would like to see some I guess you know concession made for not-for-profit organizations where it doesn't cost them a fortune to, and it's not painful to go through an application process, where they're allowed to put signs up the day before or a week before their event, and to promote whatever fundraising activity they've got going on. And there's lots of groups like that. So in your in our current bylaw, um, does does it permit a not-for-profit organization to put up a temporary sign leading up to their event, like 2, 3, 4, 5 days in advance?
Yeah, temporarily, but not a business. So yeah, like an event, we would have we would allow those signs. So, but we will, but we
we
can we can relook at the clause and make sure it reads
yeah,
that way.
that's my opinion. I just think that there's a lot of good causes out there in our community for not-for-profit organizations, and signage is important leading up to their events. And there's not just one group I mentioned, but there's lots of them like that. So I just think in the bylaw, I hope there's some concessions made for not-for-profits for, those small signs you can put up around where the event's being held or throughout the community and how many and so on and so forth. And I just want to make sure that was clear in the bylaw that that's permitted and how many they can put up and when. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Member Wallace?
Thank you. I was just wondering if there's a target deadline that you're searching for to complete the bylaw revision.
Thank you. We would like to get it done as soon as possible. It was on our last year's business plan, so we're still a little bit behind the gun, but it would be nice to see in the next month or so have a draft, and then we can start debating the finer points of it. Once we get the draft, then we can see we can detail certain points and kind of start hammering that through. So,
Member Martin?
Mr. Plants, through Madam Chair. So our purpose today is this just an information purpose? Are we going to have an opportunity to see a more fleshed out version of this bylaw before it goes to council, or is this it?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. The purpose of today is to give this committee, which is one of the main users of the bylaw as a decision-making body when there are variances that come forward, an early opportunity to show you kind of where we're going with the overall scope of what we want to do with the bylaw, and your opportunity to say, well, you know, in our experience with the variances we've looked at and the decisions we've looked at, or the things that we see in the community, we really hope you make sure that you include these things, or we'd rather you didn't deal with these things. We think they're not necessary. That's kind of sort of a scope feedback opportunity for today. And then if there is interest on the part of the committee to see a draft and be able to comment in more detail on the wording in the draft, we can incorporate that into the schedule if there's interest on the part of the committee for that.
Sir, thank you, Madam Chair. Supplemental question. I know the existing sign bylaw, and it is, I agree with Mr. Plants, cumbersome, but it does, it was obviously taken from other municipalities, and it is the sum of many, many sign bylaw experiences probably across Canada that somebody has put this down, because it has virtually every eventuality. That does lead to being cumbersome, but it's also very inclusive. And I applaud 100% the streamlining of this, so people can actually figure out what they have to do. But it's going to be important, in my view, to make sure as you go through this that a lot of those eventualities are covered, because it is a very comprehensive existing bylaw, but as you pointed out, difficult to navigate. Thank you very much.
Well, I'll offer up some questions or comments, and then can I go first, Mike? Is that okay? And then I'll come back to you. Yeah, I'm not precluding you having more. I'm a big fan of the sign bylaw, so I really am appreciative of this project because it is cumbersome. So the thought of having something that's easier to understand, easier to read, easier to present to the public for awareness and that kind of thing, that's all good. I don't want to lose the baby with the bathwater, to use an old expression. I paid particular attention to the list of sign variances. Basically, even though it appears as though, you know, there were 5 this year, it's really only 3 because they were related to 3 applicants. So, you know, 3 per year, and there doesn't really seem to be a pattern there. So what I thought was missing from the list of sign variances that have happened, and I wasn't aware of this, so I appreciate that you put it in the report. When something is enabled, or when something comes in via site plan control process, they don't have to go through the variance process. So I, as a member of council and as a member of this committee, would really like whatever variances have sort of been enabled through the site plan process over the last couple of years too, they should be on this list as well. Because then if there is something that shows up more than a few times, that would be more obvious. I didn't realize that site plan control meant that something didn't have to go through a variance process. So, and that information wasn't here. So just as an add-on to the the variances that have been processed through. If there's any way to indicate if, you know, a number of them have happened by a site plan control, maybe that would show something that jumps out as, yeah, here's one we should look at, because I don't see any patterns here that, you know, we should sort of address. My own particular things related to what I read in the idea about how to develop one. I'm hearing more and more from people about flashing light signs triggering them when they're driving, that it's distracting and it triggers an emotional reaction. So I don't think we have too many, but maybe that's something that is worthy of just a little bit of thought in terms of how flashing light signs can fit in or not fit in, maybe. I also noticed that, you know, the locations for prohibitive signs. And again, I realize it's just a guideline document, but it makes no mention of utility poles at all. And it does suggest that signs could be on light standards. Well, personally, I don't want to see signs on light standards. So, you know, and utility poles, definitely we don't want signage all over them. I also noticed that well, I think something that's important to make sure that we capture, and I know you will, is temporary signage on road allowances. And to Vice Deputy Mayor Myatt's comments about nonprofits, you know, certainly those are the locations where a lot of those signs, the stick in the ground ones, end up. And I know that they're not removed, but there's a time period before events when they're okay. But certainly road allowances can get cluttered very quickly. And, you know, it shouldn't require that we have to, you know, put in complaints or whatever about businesses doing something in a road allowance. Nonprofits are cool. But, you know, certainly some language that really defines what's okay on a temporary basis on road allowances, I think would be a good thing. I noticed in the way that the guidelines were written, they use the expression, you know, this applies to, you know, or anything that's lawfully erected or displayed prior to the implementation of a new bylaw. Well, it caught my eye because lawfully erected has two words there, but or displayed. So I want to make sure that if you know we're creating a new bylaw, we often, you know, have grandfather clauses or whatever, but certainly a sign that shouldn't be there right now, we don't really want to enable it to continue. So language is really important about how we look at what currently exists. And I, you know, have on my list here, is there a current list of whoever has a sign permit? I don't believe there is, but certainly it would be good to know that most of the signs in town have a sign permit. I also think portable signs are like the A-frame ones and that sort of thing. You know, we have more of those showing up and they have their place, but certainly we want to make sure they're in the right locations and for the right amount of time and for the right reasons. I feel really strongly that you got to make sure that we keep addressing billboards. We've done a good job over the last decade with having billboards removed from the settlement areas of Saugeen Shores, and you know, I would like to see that continue. Real estate signage here has always had a little bit of a special kind of place in the mix too, so that's important to address. And we also need to think about the illumination of signs. I can't remember exactly what it's called, and I think it happened during the last term of council, so maybe Vice Deputy Mayor Myatt might know a little bit more about it, but I think the town has enacted a dark skies kind of attitude. And so the way signs are illuminated becomes very significant. So those would be my initial comments anyway. And I didn't really have any questions in there. It's just stuff that caught my eye as I was reading. And I also, just in closing, I really appreciate that, you know, when you continue along with the process, that your intention is, as you create the new bylaw and develop it, that you will pay particular attention to making sure that people who are looking at the draft or whatever are aware of how what's in the current bylaw is over there, or if it's not over there, why it was left off. So I know you noted that in your report, so thank you for that. And now, Vice Deputy Mayor, did you have more comments or questions?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just want to make sure the discussion went right around the table before I jumped in again. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak again. Yeah, it was about the hydro pole signs, and people are great to put those on our hydro poles, but they're not so great taking them down. And there needs to be some strong language in there about hydro pole posters. I just think they're an eyesore, and you see them around town. They don't get taken down, and uh, and some people from out of town. Matter of fact, a good number of people from out of town are putting them up. So there needs to be some strong language in there about that. They should not be permitted on hydro poles, in my view. And my second point was about the illuminated signs. I hope there's some, a good discussion around around the senior management team level and about illumination. I think they can be distracting, and I'd be interested to see what all of the rest of council feels when this does eventually make its way to council. I'm not sure the thoughts around the table about illuminated signs, but I think they can be distracting when driving. So I'll be interested to hear how that's written in the bylaw. I'll be paying special attention to that one when it comes back. Thank you.
Member Martin?
Madam Chair and gentlemen, just a small example of the importance of the details in this. So 10.1N talks about the prohibition against obscenity. And we did have a circumstance here, which was handled very well by you folks, where an individual had a sign up with a derogatory, with an adverbial suggestion to a member of parliament, what they can do to themselves. And, it's just when you're bringing children around and grandchildren, it's my view that people of Saugeen Shores don't really need to see that from a flag where people are driving by maybe 1,000 cars a week. So again, to be able to enforce that, you have to be able to go through this and see 10.1N. It is clutter, but what we're doing is we're drawing a bylaw for the next 20 years, not for the past 20 years. And quite frankly, in 1999, I don't think that would have been a consideration. Now it is a consideration. You see it on cars, you see it on flags. Cars, that's out of our bailiwick. So I can't, and by the way, illuminated signs, this existing one has got a great section on illuminated signs. It talks about the fact that it can't be illuminated, that the message can't change any less than 5 seconds. So you're not saying, eat at Joe's, eat at Fred's, like that, really quick. It also has the business of it can't have repetitious flashing lights at all. So it's very, very well addressed in this existing bylaw. This is actually a real treasure trove. And I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but that really is my hallmark. But there is a lot in here which we need, and we need to have specificity in what's going to go forward in the next 20 years, for the next 20 years. Because it may be cumbersome, but it needs to be included, in my respectful view. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anyone else? Oh, I lost my agenda. Well, I hope you got some feedback there. And certainly, I would appreciate, I think, on behalf of the Committee of Adjustment, if there is an opportunity for, at some point in the future, as the draft comes to fruition, if you could come back and just let us take a look again, I think that would be appreciated by all of us. And we're just receiving this information tonight, so there's no vote required on that. Is there anything else before I move on? Okay. We have no public hearings. Our next meeting date is set for March the 18th, 2024. At the moment, there doesn't appear to be applications, but certainly Dana will let us know as soon as she can whether or not the meeting is a go or is canceled, or there's no need for a meeting. So seeing that, I will ask for adjournment. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Michael Martin, seconded by Hope Wallace, that this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment on February the 20th, 24 adjourns at 5:25 p.m. Thank you very much, everyone. Oh, all in favor? I always forget that part. That's carried. Thank you very much, everyone.